As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner YouGov offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more. Tencent in the news here. Tencent launches 60 new video games, partners with Microsoft as rivalry with ByteDance heats up. So basically, Tencent's Timmy Studios and Microsoft's Xbox Game Studios formed a strategic partnership. And as part of this partnership and at their Tencent's annual video gaming conference, they announced more than 60 new titles coming from their game studios. I mean, when I saw this, I actually thought it was a typo because 60 new games is more games than I think maybe Activision Blizzard has made in the entirety of its existence. But does anyone think this is just an unbelievable number? Is Tencent just going to flood the market with new games? And obviously some of these are like mobile games and things like that, right? So it's not all like AAA blockbuster on your PC, whatever. But can anyone keep up with Tencent at this point? And now Tencent plus Microsoft from a game development perspective. Jeff, I don't know your thoughts on this.
Yeah. No one can keep up with Tencent. I mean, they are a machine on the investment side, and they also hold the keys to China. So it's almost like you have to do business with them as a Western publisher. Either that, or you have to go to NetEase, or like there's two other kind of names that you could
or
go
ByteDance.
To. Yeah,
which makes
ByteDance is interesting as a competitor because we obviously know about them from TikTok, but we don't hear about them in gaming. I think in the West quite as much, but I do think they probably will probably start making more noise. Forgot what your initial question was. Can anyone keep up?
Scale and size, right?
It's impressive. Yeah, 60 games is. To your point, I think a lot of those are probably mobile games or maybe China versions of like Call of Duty Mobile, Apex Legends. Like they can include, all of those as new games. I do think the Microsoft partnership with Teamy is interesting because Teamy is typically known as a mobile publisher. So what are they doing with Microsoft? I think that was probably more interesting to me than the 60 being, a big number.
So you're telling me if you're EA or you're Activision, right? You're not concerned at all when you see Timmy and Microsoft together and under the Tencent umbrella announcing 60 new games? Like, are you not worried that they can sort of just flood the market with enough content every single year that your sort of one game every 4 or 5 year kind of model maybe stops resonating, right? Because people always want the new.
I don't think in the West that's typically a strategy that works. I mean, there's already tons and tons of games that flood onto Steam daily, but the franchises that are popular with the IP that's popular tend to resonate in the West, at least on PC and console. Mobile has always been that, massive flood of stuff on the Apple Store. And that's why mobile gaming is its own kind of different beast, and customer acquisition costs and actually getting people to download your game is really the biggest part of mobile gaming. The actual game is sort of secondary. But I do think these studios in the West are probably worried just as they look at the scale and the resources that Tencent has. And at some point, they're going to turn their attentions to the West just because it's such a big market and they already have China basically on lock. At some point, in order to grow, they're going to need to move west. And I know Tencent has sort of started doing that. They have a lot of investments in a lot of these studios, but they also, I think, have a presence in the US and in the West. So I do think that is something for the bigger players to worry about. Can Tencent throw enough resources? I don't think it would be a flood the zone type thing, because that strategy I don't think would work. But could they create a big IP that competes with, the Apexes, the Call of Duties, the Grand Theft Autos of the world? They sure do have the resources, so it's possible.
Well, to that end, could because I don't know that much about the Microsoft strategic partnership either. Could one of you talk about that and whether or not you think that more of these Western companies will partner with these powerhouses in the space?
Yeah, I think that's Christian's question here, right? Which is, are the games directed to the U.S. market? This article specifically doesn't say. I didn't watch the announcement live or the games conference live, and it obviously wasn't in English, and so I also don't know if they did say. But I would bet good money that some portion of that 60 games, because of the Microsoft partnership, will come west. Is it 5 games? Is it 10 games? Is it 2 games? I don't know. But my guess is the big part of the Microsoft partnership is access to the development studios in the West and the audiences in the West.
Is there any specifics on what the partnership is? Again, I'm asking because I don't know about it, so I don't know. It might just be called a strategic partnership, but I was just curious if there's anything about what the actual.
I haven't seen much about it. It happened literally a few days ago.
It could also just be a cross-publishing agreement where it's
right.
Timmy's gonna put games on Microsoft Store on the Xbox, and some of the Xbox games will get access to China through whatever Chinese PC, Steam, whatever platform Tencent has.
Well, Christian asked an interesting question here, guys. I want. There's a good discussion around this. When it comes to games,
my exact point.
Quality over quantity, Tencent can produce a bunch of games, but gamers will ultimately choose the titles they like. Marketing dollars also helps. I don't think Christian's wrong here, right? And Jeff, I know you made that point. It's more, though, that games are a little bit like investments or Broadway shows or movies, right? If you put out 60 of them, there's a higher chance you will have a Fortnite in there, right? And because you don't really know. Yes, the quality may be slightly lower, but Among Us isn't a high quality game, but it became a huge hit, right? Mm-hmm. And so the chance of having a hit goes way up, as opposed to putting out 2 games and hoping desperately that one of them's a home run. I just think gaming has become something of a home run business from a developer and publisher perspective. And by Tencent putting out 60 games, they've massively increased their chance of a home run. I don't know if you guys,
especially in the mobile market, the mobile market is all about new games over quality games. I do think that, to your point and to Christian's point, quality still matters, but I do think that the balance has shifted in favor of quantity. I think a long time ago, when there was very few game releases per year and 2 consoles you could play games on, then yes, quality was of the utmost importance because you weren't getting that many. But now, when you have access to games on every device in every place, I think that quantity plays a little bit more. And I think it's more about balancing the two than it is about choosing which one is more important over the other. Because in the mobile market, quantity is definitely more important, but in the PC market, quality is probably more important. Yeah. So it depends on their mix of games too.
Yeah, I think one of the things we've seen recently is IPs becoming more like forever franchises and going to different consoles, and the moats really, deepening, right? We've seen, look at Apex Legends, right? Everyone thought it was a flash in the pan, and it's continued to grow. I was reading EA's transcript just earlier. It's going to do $750 million next year. That's massive. I remember the first year people thought they said it was going to do 300 million, and then everyone was disappointed. And turns out, 2 years later, it's doubled that, and it's continuing to grow 20% year over year. That's an incredibly successful franchise. So the moats around the most popular IP are deepening. So, Paul, the corollary I think I would give to your example of, you kind of describe gaming as almost the VC model, where it's a power law kind of thing. You want to scatter 50 shots and one of them will be your home run. I think that is true in the sense of, if you're just trying to get a moderate hit, you'll get a Fall Guys or something like that will do well shark fin and then kind of go out. If I were trying to create a lasting brand and a lasting IP, I think I'd rather have like 2 or 3 deep shots that I spend $150 million on versus 100 things I spend $5 million on. Because
the risk profile there is different though.
Yeah.
And if we're talking about Tencent, what they're looking to do, if we're talking about what would scare EA and Activision, it's if Tencent takes $1 billion and makes 4, Apex Legends style games for the West, that scares EA and Activision a hell of a lot more than if Tencent takes $1 billion and makes, a $205 million games. Yeah. That doesn't scare them at all because a couple of them will make money, and that strategy in and of itself might be less risky for Tencent, and they actually might make more, the ROI on that might actually be better, but that doesn't scare EA. What scares EA is if they try to create a franchise that could kill Battlefield, that could kill Apex, kill Call of Duty.
Well, I think Christian has a good point sort of on your point here, Jeff, which is he says, but maybe one of those 60 games will stick and then they can try to sequel it or make it a live game like Apex, right? That is a potential model.
It's true, but have we ever seen that work? Maybe with the scale.
Like you get one hit Tencent, and then you double down on it, right? Like
it's definitely a fair pushback. And if you have the resources of Tencent, you might be able to do that. Like, hey, throw a bunch of crap at the wall. Oh, that seems to be working. Okay, now move all the resources over there. Let's build it. That could very well work. But I feel like in order to create a franchise and an IP, you kind of need to have that up front. You need to build out that world, build out the mechanics, build out what it's going to be, the lore. It's really hard to just create like some 3-level platformer and then be like, oh wow, it turns out it's really popular. Like, let's turn it into the next Destiny. Like, it just doesn't. I don't think it really works that way. I don't know, I'm not a game developer, but it's harder than you think.